Protesters outside Phoenix shut down a highway before a Donald Trump event yesterday, and we're back now with the panel. Well, there were protests yesterday not just in Arizona, but also in New York City outside the Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue. You can see the protests there, and all of this adding to concerns among the Republican establishment, among movement conservatives about Donald Trump actually winning the nomination. Kristen, it seems almost every day there's a new story, whether it's a bunch of fat cats having a dinner at some club here, or now there's a news story about a third party and Tom Coburn, the retired senator from Oklahoma, running as a third party candidate. How seriously should we take all this talk about a Stop Trump movement?
The Stop Trump movement may have sort of run out of time. There was so much time spent last fall attacking Donald Trump as being insufficiently conservative, and those attacks fell flat. Quite frankly, most of Donald Trump's voters don't love him because they think he's conservative. It's because they think he's strong and he's a winner. And so the time has elapsed. Attitudes about Donald Trump have really sort of calcified. And if you like Donald Trump, it's unlikely at this point that you will be persuaded to change your mind. So I think at this point, the math for anybody to stop Trump before the convention becomes very hard. He'll pick up delegates in Arizona, will move forward into a state like New York, where the last poll showed him up by over 50 points. Donald Trump, the map looks pretty good for him for the next month and a half or so. It's going to be very difficult for folks to stop him, at least from winning the Republican nomination.
You agree with that, Bob?
Yes. I mean, first of all, if you try to excavate this, you realize that the only way for Trump probably not to get the nomination is for him to withdraw, and that is not going to happen. If there's one thing that Trump does, he never quits, and so he's he's the heavy in this, and there's something that he's brought forth in the populace that those of us who try to understand this don't understand. And
I was going to ask you about that. I mean, you've covered a lot of campaigns, a lot of candidates. Can you put this, and I'm going to ask George the same thing, in any kind of historical perspective? Do you compare it to, some people are saying Richard Nixon in '68 with the silent majority, George Wallace in '68. What do you compare Trump to?
You can't compare him to anything. And I think there are people out there who just kind of say, let's repot the plant. Let's give somebody else a chance. And it's not just anger or disappointment in their lives. It's the sense of, let's shake this up, and no one is shaking it up as much as Trump.
George?
Well, stylistically, Trump is in the George Wallace tradition. Wallace, who famously said there's too much dignity in American politics, we have to have more meanness. Wallace got 46 electoral votes because he has a regional base. What makes Trump more interesting is he's not a regional candidate. He has support all over the country, as he's demonstrated. The problem is this: not only are his negatives 61%, almost double his positives 32%, but he's appealing entirely to white people. Now, in 1988, George Herbert Walker Bush got 59% of the white vote, which was high, and that translated into 426 electoral votes. Mitt Romney in 2012 got 59% of the white vote. That translated into 206 electoral votes. Romney got 17%, that's all, of the non-white vote. Trump, by every measure, would do worse than that, which means he would have to get not just the 65% of the white vote to win that Ronald Reagan got, sweeping 49 states. He would have to get 70% of the white vote. A, it won't happen, and B, it would destroy the Republican Party by making it the party of white people.
Now, I'm sure that the Clinton camp and the Sanders camp, they look at exactly that same demographics and basically say the country, the demographic face of the country is changing. On the other hand, you do hear talk, Lisa, about Trump reshuffles the electoral deck, that suddenly the Rust Belt, the industrial Midwest, Pennsylvania, Michigan, states, Wisconsin, states that have gone reliably for Democrats for several election cycles, suddenly would be in play. How seriously do they take that?
I mean, smart Democrats, the ones that I'm talking to at least, are not overly confident about this. And in part, that's because Trump is so wildly unpredictable. Like, yes, they agree on the demographics point. They're certainly going to try to boost support among Latino supporters, among African American supporters, among women. But, you know, with Trump, the Republicans had obviously a lot of trouble taking him out, and you just don't know what you're going to get, and you don't know. He doesn't play by the standard rules. So that makes a lot of Democrats a little nervous, particularly given that Hillary Clinton, by her own admission, is not the world's best campaigner. But their theory of the case is basically 3 C's: credentials, character, and controversy. So they're digging through his business records. They're going to highlight deals that went badly. They're going to bring back his statements about Latinos and women, all those kinds of things. And they're going to talk about his temperament. Is this someone you want with your finger on the button as a way of pulling over moderate Democrats, particularly suburban women in some of these swing states that could make the difference for them in the general election?
That the people in the Clinton campaign and, as you call smart Democrats, are worried.
Right.
And that, you know, this is a serious worry. And, you know, just from the polling perspective, what are there? Almost half the people don't vote, right? And Trump is getting some of those people to the polls. Right. Are there good numbers on that? Because that's maybe why people are worried.
In addition to which, let's face it, if Trump is a target-rich environment, so is Hillary Clinton. And Lord knows there's plenty of Oppo research to be done on her. I want to ask one more thing here, Kristen. Trump is going to be in Washington tomorrow. He's going to meet with AIPAC, the pro-Israeli lobby, but he's also supposedly going to have a meeting with a lot of mainstream Republicans. How possible is it that he could, having taken this stance to get this far in the primaries, change his tune, I mean, not change it completely, but become a much more mainstream figure and somehow make an accommodation with the GOP establishment?
I believe there are many in the GOP establishment who will want to co-opt Donald Trump, find a way to make peace with him, find a way that they can still show their face at a Republican convention that is nominating him and call themselves Republicans and sort of get through the next couple of months. But I think there's going to be a big division where the folks that consider themselves hardcore conservatives, who care deeply about things like limited government, who oppose someone who sounds like an authoritarian who wants to expand executive power, remain very troubled by him and might say, if he defines what it is to be a Republican, then maybe I'm not anymore.
George?
Well, I think
can the party, it's a big tent, can it expand to include Donald Trump at least through November, or is this stretching it too far?
it cannot expand that far and remain a conservative party, which means there would be, if he's the nominee, there will be no conservative running in the race. And the Vichy Republicans, who are coming to terms with, as collaborators with the takeover of their party, ought to understand that.
And do you see a third party under those circumstances?
Possibly.
Are you going to lead the ticket?
No.
But
I would vote for it.
you would vote for it?
Certainly.
All right. Wow. I think we made some news ourselves. Thank you, panel. See you next Sunday.